Namaste, welcome everyone. I wanted to say a little bit about the difference between pain and suffering. I think I've mentioned it before, but it's become more and more clear to me over the years what the difference is. My teacher, Rudy, he said something that I responded to when he first said it with a little bit of an awe. He said, pain is God's love, which many of you have heard since then. I've said it and others have said it. So pain is God's love. Now, what does that mean? Well, pain, if you go deeply enough into it and embrace it and surrender into it, it becomes, it dissolves dualism. It becomes a sense of oneness, a sense of gratitude, sense of sweetness. It doesn't mean that it's almost the most fun thing to feel, but if you embrace it with your loving witness awareness, it can work for you as a gift from God, as opposed to against you, which is a curse of the ego. So this is an important thing, I think. It has been in my life. And it does tie in with this witness awareness, and it ties in with the Bhairava, totally open state. I was just in Norway, and my cousin, who really was a sister for me my whole life, wonderful person, she passed away, and I went to the hospital and spent some days with her and really said goodbye to her. And the interesting thing that I observed in myself was that, of course, I felt, what we call non-equilibrium. I felt something stir in me. It was something that was not really pleasant. I miss her even before she passed away. But at the same time, I was very aware of myself, witnessing myself, and I realized there is nothing happening here. Nothing is happening. She is not going anywhere. Her essence, is just staying right here as the self, as the deep, infinite, pure potential that we all are. And so for me, that was an interesting thing to observe in myself. And I didn't by any means feel hard or repressing or denying anything. I was fully aware of the human aspect of it, but I was also able to very, very purely, in a sense, observe and not be disturbed by what I observed. It was is a natural part of life, and it happens. So that was interesting. And I know Nisargadatta, who I've mentioned here before many times, was a really wonderful teacher. And he said very simply that pain is physical, suffering is mental. So what he meant by that was that the physical, messages that we get from the body, this is a good thing. It just signals to us that we need to do something about the balance in the body. We have to take care of the body, so we feel the pain. But suffering is a secondary reaction to that. It's not that we have to be guilty about feeling a spark of suffering, but if we stay identified with the mental, emotional suffering, then we are just torturing ourselves. We can and should, if we want to be liberated, move ourselves away from the suffering in the sense that we don't stay attached to it. We notice it as a signal, oh, here I have to work on something because something is imbalanced. Our individual conditioning, ego, is disturbed, and that's okay. But we want to take that disturbance as a bit of chaos state that invites us to transform. There are people who talk about thoughts as something that you're going to be totally free of. What I understand that to mean, through my own experience primarily, is that thoughts are going to come and go, and Rudy certainly confirmed that. He said he had a whole musical going through his mind while he was sitting there teaching class. So it's not what runs through the mind, but it's the degree to which we identify with it, get attached to it, get stuck in it. So there is really a huge difference, and both we can be grateful for, both pain and suffering. But we don't want to get hooked on suffering. Then we have a victim mentality, or we have an arrogance mentality. And that is, of course, not a good thing. Then we are just stuck in the ego. So this witness awareness that we can cultivate, that has a purity about it, and a freedom about it, and a compassion built into it. I cried a lot at the hospital when I was saying goodbye to my cousin, but I cried of gratitude. It was so wonderful. It was really wonderful. And the same thing happened to me when I learned many, many years ago that my teacher Rudy had passed away. I felt just grateful. Already then, I was doing that. So, this is really also why I call this practice that we are doing the rising energy practice, because as Rudy always said, you have to rise above it. We have to feel that our perspective is not stuck in the suffering, but that we can see the suffering and feel compassion, but to be above it. In a good sense of the word, not repressing, and not being arrogant, but really being above it.